the Jepson Center. My name is Ken Anderson. I'm the interim dean of the business school here at Gonzaga, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the sixth annual Aram Lecture on Business Ethics. And I'd like to introduce one of our most distinguished professors in the school, has been with us since way back in 2008. The Aram Professor of Ethics, Dr. Brian Stevenson.
Here, here. Thank you, Dean Anderson. Actually, I thought you were referring to Andrew Brashich there for a moment. See, in the School of Business, we have sort of both looks going, the regular tie and the bow tie look. It remains to be seen which will be judged the better of the two styles. Before I introduce our Aram lecturer for tonight, I want to tell you a little bit about the lecture series itself. This, as Dean Anderson mentioned, this is the sixth annual Aram Lecture in Business Ethics. The series is dedicated to the honor of Mr. John Aram, a Gonzaga trustee and benefactor. And its intent and purpose is to give students greater awareness of the ethical dilemmas faced by decision makers in business and government. Mr. Aram's long and dedicated service to the forest industry spurred companies such as Weyerhaeuser, Potlatch, Boise Cascade, the George F. Jewett Foundation, and many other industry associates and friends to establish this professorship in business ethics at Gonzaga. And in my office, as Dean Anderson mentioned, I started in fall of '08. And over Christmas break, someone put this big chunk of wood in my office with a branding iron attached to the bottom of it. I had no idea where it came from. I came back from break and it was in my office on the desk. And I mean, it's about yay big around. And of course, it's in honor of the establishment of the Aram Professorship. Has the branding iron with an A on the bottom. I have no idea what to do with this thing. It weighs at least 40 or 45 pounds, so I'm afraid to hang it on the wall. But that is one of the perks that comes along with my position, is you get a 45-pound piece of wood with a branding iron attached to the bottom. It's quite an honor. It actually is. Mr. Aram, during his professional career, exemplified a commitment to ethical values in both his business and personal endeavors. And this lecture series is intended to continue to honor his legacy in that area. It is my honor to hold this chair, and it is indeed an honor. I started in fall of '08. I was claimed off of waivers out of the philosophy department here at GU. Dean Anderson, kiddingly, I hope, was telling me just a few minutes ago, it could go down as one of the more infamous trades in history behind the Herschel Walker trade. It's yet to be determined which of the two teams, philosophy or School of Business, got the better end of that deal. And so I'm finishing my 7th year as the Aram Chair, and it has been the greatest professional experience of my life. I will forever be grateful to the School of Business. I will forever be grateful to our ex-dean, Bud Barnes, and our current dean, Ken Anderson, for the opportunity to fill this chair, and hopefully I'll continue to enjoy that honor. I do want to extend a couple of thank yous real quick, and I'm notorious for doing this for too long, so I've been practicing. I want to thank Dean Anderson, A.J. Hawk, I don't know if she's here, and Maureen Duclos for all the work that they put in organizing this year's lecture. So if you would, please let's give them a round of applause. This is the first of the Aram lectures to be delivered by a non-academic. And those of you who have attended previous Aram lectures are probably thinking to yourselves, well, it's about damn time. Those academics were getting a little long-winded there, and we were a little tired of hearing them. Since I initiated the lecture series 6 years ago, it had always been my intent to transition the lecture series into a series that had ethics practitioners coming to campus. And so I'm really excited that we can finally get that movement going in terms of the trajectory of this lecture. I cannot think of a better person to start this tradition than our Aram lecturer for tonight. And so I want to say a few things about him, and then I'll bring him up to the podium. Scott Ma is the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Starbucks Coffee Company. He was promoted to this role in February of 2014 and is responsible for the company's global finance organization. Prior to Scott's promotion, he served as Senior VP of Corporate Finance, where he was responsible for corporate finance, including accounting, tax, and treasury. Scott has also had oversight for all financial and securities-related regulatory filings. He joined Starbucks as Global Controller in 2011. Prior to joining Starbucks, Mr. Ma served as Chief Financial Officer of Seabright Insurance Company from 2010 to 2011. From 2008 to February 2010, Scott served as Chief Financial Officer of the Consumer Banking Division of J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, having held a similar position at Washington Mutual Bank prior to its acquisition by Chase. At Chase and WAMU, Scott was responsible for all finance and accounting functions for the retail branch networks of the banks. From 1994 to 2003, he served in various financial leadership positions at General Electric Company, including service as Chief Financial Officer for GE Insurance Holdings of London. So that's quite a history, and you're to be commended for that. But here's the best thing. Scott graduated from GU. He's a Zag. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in accounting in 1990. His wife, Marilyn, is also a GU grad in engineering, right? And I won't tell the story, but I heard part of the story today lamenting the old cog and how it was a place where romance blossomed and people met each other. But anyways, we're very glad to have you with us as well, Marilyn. In his free time, which I suspect you don't have a lot of, Scott enjoys playing golf and spending time with his family. We will have a Q&A session after Scott's lecture. As with all of our academic lectures, please keep your questions tied to the lecture itself so we can further discussion regarding that. So, with no further ado, it's my great, great honor and pleasure to welcome the 6th Annual 2015 Aram Lecture in Business Ethics, Mr. Scott Ma.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks for having me here. It's truly an honor. It's humbling to stand in front of this room. I sat here through many classes and tried to stay focused and learn, and I guess some of what I was being taught rubbed off. Maybe just a little bit more on my personal background. I was born and raised in Eastern Washington. I graduated from Deer Park High School, which is, I generally tell people that don't live in Spokane that I went to school in Spokane. You guys know there's a difference between Deer Park and Spokane. And came to Gonzaga and met my wife. And Brian, I mispronounced, her name is Glory Lynn. I mispronounced Glory Lynn's name for the first 3 weeks that we dated. 3 months that we dated. She's an engineer, so she's better at numbers than I am. So it's very common, and I did it, but very, very lucky to have met Gloria. Then probably the best thing that happened to me, and then the career trajectory that Brian talked about brought me here to this spot. Again, thank you so much for taking the time. What I really want to talk about today is the natural, I guess tension is the best word, the dichotomy that exists between a for-profit company and whether that for-profit company is Starbucks, which clearly we try to have a social conscious that involves our partners and our customers and our communities, and I think we try to be at the top of that list. Or a for-profit company, a company like GE, which does a lot of really good things, but probably given the businesses that it's in, maybe doesn't go quite as far, try to go quite as far as Starbucks. But whether you're GE or Starbucks, you're in this dichotomy always between short-term decisions and long-term decisions. As CFO, probably the hardest thing that I have to do is understanding decisions that we need to make today that we don't see any financial payback for months, quarters, years, and balancing the number of those investments, how those investments ultimately pay off with this quarter's earnings or this year's earnings and the promises and commitments that we make to the street and to our shareholders. And getting that right is probably the most important thing that we do as a leadership team, and I think Howard would agree with that. Mine is a little bit more financial in nature, but a lot of those financial decisions have to do with some of the things we're going to talk about today: investing in our communities, investing in agronomy for coffee, and investing in ethically sourced coffee, investing in things that our partners care about, and trying to pay well above industry wages and well above industry benefits. And that's something that is a natural tension in the short term with financial goals, although I will tell you over the long term, we've proven qualitatively and quantitatively that when we get those investments right in our people and in our communities, you'll hear me use the word partners, that's what we call our people, because one of the benefits we give our people is we give them stock ownership. If you were to join Starbucks and work 20 hours and work for 6 months, you would be given a stock award, even as a barista. So that goes well down into the organization, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But that's what I want to spend my time talking about. Because I'm the CFO, I am going to talk a little bit about the business. I can't help myself. I think it's important to understand what we have going on at Starbucks as you start to try to think about the things that we have going and the things that we're trying to be as a public company, as a shareholder, and as trying to deliver great products to our customers as we sort of discuss this dilemma of trying to make sure we're investing correctly. Forward-looking statement, there'll be a test on this at the end. So I'm going to go through three things. Our purpose as a company, talk a little bit about our mission, then I'm going to talk a little bit about the business, and then I want to talk more broadly about role and responsibility in some of the places where we're investing and focusing. So our purpose. Our mission is simple, and it's to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. And both our mission and our values, which I took out of the presentation just to streamline it a bit. It's interesting, we revisited this year as a senior leadership team, Howard and his team, our mission and our values, and we took the mission and values that hadn't been updated for many years, and we worked on them for an entire day, which is a lot of time for us. And we probably changed in total maybe 20 words. And it shows the test of time of what really Howard and the long-term leaders have built at Starbucks. Those changes were important, and I think they modernized the mission and values. We felt really good about it. But fundamentally, if you were to walk into Starbucks 10 years ago and read our mission statement, it would look almost the same as what you're seeing up here. And so from the very start, if you think about a mission statement of a company and what it means and what I'm sure is taught and studied here at Gonzaga, from the very start you can see the balance that we're trying to get. This doesn't say to make a lot of money. This doesn't say to be the best commercial enterprise. This doesn't say to just serve customers and grow sales. This is really about a set of relationships that we have with our people, with our communities, and ultimately with our shareholders if we get it right. I'm not going to read this. I just wanted to show you in Howard's annual letter and in our corporate responsibility report, he believes in this very deeply. And we're going to, I'll talk to you about it, but I also have a video of Howard's closing comments at our most recent Investor Day, because I think we were talking a little bit about this at lunch. It has to start at the top. That you can't, maybe you can, but I doubt that you can really believe in getting this balance right and really believe about being a leader on social issues and community issues if your CEO doesn't believe it deeply. And for Howard, it's personal. And I bet for many CEOs, the way they feel about whatever causes they choose to support and however deep they choose to go as a company, my guess is those things matter very personally to that CEO if it works well. So this is what he thinks about and talks about all the time, and it's great. And this statement is really important. He introduced the statement a couple of years ago at our annual meeting of shareholders, and it really resonates for me because I would say this is what we try to do. We try to be performance-driven, but we try to do everything that we do through the lens of humanity. So whether it's how we respond from a POS outage, which we had recently on Friday, which was unfortunate, responded by giving away free drinks until we could get things rectified, or how we deal with our partners, our employees, and how we think about healthcare and how things work in that. or how we think about where and when to build our stores, or how we take stance on important issues, whether it's race relations, whether it's marriage equality, whether it's guns in our stores. And I was talking to Brian, I'm not going to debate with you today whether you believe those things are the right things or not. It's not really what we're here to talk about, but what it is it's important to us. It's important to our customers, and it's important to our employees, and we try to be brave on those things where we need to be brave and we need to take the right stands. But always, we know that the lens, the gate into having the right to be that way and do those things, you've got to drive performance. If we started not delivering results regularly, if we started missing our financial performance, what happens is people start asking questions about those things that you're doing. Are they really core? Are they really working? And what we've said over and over again is we can't deliver the performance that we need to deliver if we don't invest in our partners and invest in our communities and care. It's actually core to what Starbucks is. It's core to the way we treat our farmers and source our coffee, because we have some of the highest quality coffee in the world. We want to deliver that to you in the cup. We've got to get that right. We can't cut corners on that, or ultimately the product will start to fall apart. So that balance, that tension is always there, and it's actually a lot of fun to manage. Howard always says success is best when shared. So we try to share it. I talked about Beanstalk, but we spent $233 million last year as a company in healthcare. Our healthcare, prior to Affordable Care Act, kicks in at 20 hours. It's more generous than the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, and it is in the space that we operate in, absolutely a leader. And Howard tells a story about growing up. He grew up in Brooklyn, and his father didn't have health care, and he had a work-related accident, and it really put a lot of pressure on their family growing up, because he couldn't get the care that he needed. So it's very personal. He also told a great story in 2008 during the financial crisis. Starbucks went through a really rough time. Not only were all of our customers impacted and all of the issues that were happening in the more macro economy, we made some really big mistakes. Howard had left the company. He was still on the board, but left the company. We built a lot of stores that we shouldn't have built. And we were extended. We had infrastructure that we really couldn't afford. And when sort of the tide went out and transactions went down, that infrastructure was exposed. And we made we closed some stores and did some things we'd rather not do. We had to do it to save the company. But there's this great story in a meeting with shareholders. They were not happy. The stock went down to $7. If you were to split adjust the stock today, is at about 101. Sorry. So it was at $7. It's 101 today. The company was in really deep financial trouble. You see the investments were made. An investor stood up and said, "Howard, you got to cut healthcare. You've got to. You just have to do this. No one will hold you accountable for the repercussions of that. You need to do it. No one is going to hold you accountable." And Howard just looked at the guy and said, "Are you kidding me? No one's going to hold me accountable? I have single mothers that rely on this. I have people that work at Starbucks and have worked here for years that have come to count on this. They'll hold me accountable, and I'll hold myself accountable." So very powerful, very deep in the psyche of the company. $210 million in pre-tax Beanstalk. We call our stock that we give our baristas Beanstalk. It's restricted stock. We granted $210 million, and since the inception of the Beanstalk program, we've granted over $1 billion. And there are stories of managers that have worked at Starbucks for 10 years that have lived in an apartment. Then when their Beanstalk gets to a certain level, they're able to buy a house. Or assistant managers that are able to buy a car with their stock. So if I do my job right, and Howard and I do my job right, even though those stock grants any one year may not add up to a lot, if we grow the stock and add those amounts every year, and people stay with Starbucks, it can make a real difference in people's lives. So that's a point of pride. And a lot goes into the 401k and a whole bunch of other things, including, which we'll talk about in a minute, education. 13th consecutive list on World Most Admired Companies. This is not much about me. It's a lot about Howard. But Starbucks, there's some pretty big and good names up there. And not easy to be up there with some iconic companies, but we try to make sure that we're growing the business in the right way, and when we do, good things happen. Okay, so I'll try to keep this brief, but I want to talk a little bit about the business. So this is a picture of our Reserve Roastery in Seattle. It is a big Starbucks. You can see right in here is really the actual Starbucks footprint, and it's probably, I'm going to guess, 1/20th of the total footprint. So we have a space that's probably 10 or 15 times the size of a normal Starbucks store. It has a Tom Douglas pizza restaurant in it. Tom Douglas is a famous Seattle restaurant owner. It's got a full-scale roasting and pack line in the facility, and it's got a lot of different ways to enjoy coffee. So things like pour over, siphon, Chemex, just about every way you can make coffee, you can enjoy it in Starbucks. And the reason we built it is because as we've expanded our business, and we'll talk about this a bit, Starbucks has been growing a lot in areas like food and tea and juice, trying to get more people to come into Starbucks during more parts of the day. And that's been a very successful strategy for us. The downside of that is we've been criticized for losing our focus on high quality coffee, and you've got companies like Blue Bottle and Stumptown that have come in and tried to claim the higher ground. The reality is our coffee is every bit as good as it was and every bit as good as those very noble competitors, but because of the other stuff, we're a little bit vulnerable. So Howard, for years, has been talking about the importance of our Reserve brand, which is the highest level and quality of coffee within Starbucks. They're small, micro lot. Some of the lots are no more than a few acres on one farm in an origin company. We bring that in, we roast it here at the roastery, and we ship that as Reserve coffee all over the world. And this is our answer to try to make sure people remember that we still have the best coffee and take great care in our core product. So let me just show you a video, if I can figure out how to do this. Lines up outside the door. Oh, I got it, Ken. Here we go. So.
When we thought about building something that had not been created before, what we said to ourselves is, let's not play it safe. Let's really stretch ourselves beyond what people can imagine. Let's create the Willy Wonka of coffee.
We've always wanted to create a working roastery connected to a cafe where you take that curtain away and say, let us really show you how coffee gets made. It has to be like an experience, like a stage, like a show.
Local artisans and craftsmen and fabricators helped us to create this place. We're doing all these little things that on themselves maybe you don't really think that much of, but when you start putting it all together, it's pretty stunning.
Coffee's just going around in all different directions. It's going from the roaster to the bar, it's landing right behind the baristas, and whatever coffee you want to have, you can have it brewed in whatever pleasure you like.
This is the beginning of creating a new brand of rare and exotic coffees called Starbucks Reserve, which are micro lot coffees that you can't find anywhere in the world. Everything we've ever done to this point has led us here. This is the moment of the next generation of Starbucks.
So if you haven't been to the roastery and you're in Seattle, I recommend you go. And if you do go, I recommend you go before 10. Because from about 10 until 5 or 6, the lines are pretty long. This store, the top line of this store is running far ahead of what were pretty optimistic financial projections. And it's a big store, so it takes a lot of labor. It's highly popular. It's becoming both a tourist spot and a place to meet for locals because of the Serious Pie restaurant that's in there. People will go and have dinner and then come have a cup of coffee, or if they have to wait, they'll put their name on the list at Serious Pie and have a cup of coffee at Starbucks, walk around and look at everything. But it's truly an amazing place. And I think one of the things that we feel most proud about is we really wanted this to be about coffee, not about the show. It is the Willy Wonka of coffee, but it is a real roasting plant, a real restaurant, and a real Starbucks store, and you can have the best coffee in the world there. When others come from competitors, consistently they've told us that we did it right. So that feels pretty good, because what they really wanted to do was come and see it and show that we didn't get back to where we once were at the pinnacle of coffee. So we feel really good about that. Okay, so just a little bit about Starbucks. In 1992, we had 125 stores. Howard was telling me the other day that when they had 3 stores, he remembers we're going through our strategic planning process with our board right now. When we had, I think it was 3 stores in Seattle, they were thinking through their long-term strategic plan, and their dream someday was to go to Portland. Yeah, he said, we did that, Scott, we got there. So we have 22,000 stores now, we're in 66 countries, 75 million customers a week, and over 300,000 people that wear the Starbucks green apron. Significant shareholder value, if you go back to that point where Starbucks was at $7 or $8 a share to where we are today, pretty decent outperformance of the S&P 500. Our market cap today is actually $75 billion. We had a really good, the last 2, this is as of the end of our fiscal year, which is September, the last 2 quarters have been very strong for Starbucks, and so we've seen some run up in the stock and great shareholder return. And again, for us, that concept of success is best when shared. Our partners, the vast majority of them, any of them that have stayed with us over that time, are recognizing their own stock run-up. So just quickly on 2014, and again, I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of numbers. What I really just want to talk to you a little bit about is the shape and kind of what we're doing and what we're about. So our revenue growth has been double digit, and our earnings growth has been in the 15 to 20% range. We did some work, and I'm not here to brag about Starbucks, but just to give you the scale of the organization, we did some work where we had Goldman Sachs take every company that was growing the top line at 10% and the bottom line at least 15% and had at least $10 billion in revenue. There's only about 10 companies, and 8 of them are technology companies, places like Apple and Google, Amazon, when they can get over the profitability line. So, this is a big company. It's not easy to grow. It's really, it's hard to grow a retail company at $5 a transaction. In order for me, we'll make $20 billion in revenue this year. If I want to grow at 10%, I need $2 billion at $5 a transaction. That's like 400 million transactions. To hit my revenue target, I have to make 400 million more lattes next year than I made this year. So lots of things pointed at that, and it's kind of fun to talk about all the irons we have in the fire. One of the big criticisms we get from investors is, do you have too much stuff going on? So one of my roles within the company, working with Howard and the leadership team, is to work on prioritization and focus and try to figure out what we're not going to do. Just quickly, a tour around the world. So our Americas segment has 14,400 stores. We're in 15 countries. You can see the growth profile has been significant. This is our largest business. You can see the margin expansion we've had in a business that has $12 billion in revenue has been significant. And the key to our success in the Americas business ties back to what I talked about in the roastery. And it's really about innovation. And it's innovation in our core product lines, but increasingly it's innovation in things that are related, adjacent, if you will. So tea, both hot and iced tea, we did an acquisition of a company called Divana. Those products have come into our stores, and they've been basically doubled our tea sales with that brand. Lots of innovation around types of iced tea. Iced tea is the fastest growing beverage at lunch, actually. Lots of innovation around food, both at breakfast and at lunch. Our food growth has outpaced our revenue growth. Food's growing at about 15% a year, and lots of innovation around the mobile app. So how many of you guys have used the mobile app? What I would say is, if you don't know, the mobile app now, as of a couple of months ago, has the ability to order ahead. So if you have the mobile app and you're a My Starbucks Reward member, then all you have to do is connect a payment card to that, which you may already have if you're paying with your phone. You can actually order in advance, walk in and pick up your beverage or food. So the app is pretty cool. You build your order. It'll show you your previous orders. If you're 3 to 5 minutes away, say you're here at the Jepson Center listening to a thrilling Aram lecture, and you're wrapping up your standing ovation, you can hit your order, walk over to the new what's it called? Hamilton Center. Sorry, I apologize. And your drink and food will be ready there. It'll tell you how many minutes so that you can judge, and if you think you can if it says it'll be ready in 3 minutes, you can wait a couple minutes and order it once you're getting closer. But that's the kind of innovation that we need to drive the business. And I would also say innovation in what we're trying to do around investment in our partners. So one of the things that we did this year is we added $140 million of investments in base wages. Food, given the focus on food, is now a benefit. It used to be able to get a beverage on shift. Now people that work at Starbucks can get a food benefit. There was a gentleman I met that works at Starbucks. Is he here? Maybe he took off. Anyway, that food benefit is a big deal for our partners, and so we're trying to make sure we're doing that. And again, we'll talk about the education benefit, which we think is also innovative. In Europe, we're in 37 countries, 2,200 stores. Europe for us has been a difficult market. It's very, very competitive. It's expensive. And we've generally moved away from owning most of our stores to licensing most of our stores because the cost of capital and cost of doing business in Europe is hard. The good news is, as you can see the profitability at the bottom here, it's been working. And this year we'll have about a 12% operating margin. The operating margin of the company is just under 20%. So Europe's coming in line in a pretty tricky market. And so the good news about Europe, because we've restructured it and moved mostly to a license model where we have people like Al Shaya in the Middle East who operate somewhere between 700 and 800 stores. We partner with them. They use their capital and local know-how, and we get royalty revenues off the back of that. That restructuring has allowed us to accelerate our growth. We'll double the number of stores in Europe over the coming years. China Asia Pacific is our fastest growing market, 15 markets, 5,000 stores, and 1,600 stores in China. So China has been a very important market to us, and in the most recent quarter, China actually had same-store sales growth, so like-for-like sales growth of 12%, which is pretty incredible. And it's all traffic. We definitely have the brand working well in China. It's resonating well. And again, in China, we've made investments in our partners through things like there's a Starbucks University that our partners go to and train. We've made a number of investments in agronomy. We have a mill in Yunnan in China where we're helping the farmers around that mill up-level the quality of coffee, and then we're using our mill to process it and get it shipped out both to Starbucks and to other people. So those types of investments have done well. And in Asia, it's grown, I think this is 17 straight quarters of 20% or more revenue growth. It's now 19. This was, again, a couple of quarters old. And that's what it's really all about. So we're adding a lot of stores in countries like China. We now own our Japanese market, and we see innovation with things like, you can see up there, the red bean green tea Frappuccino, which to me wouldn't be the first Frappuccino I order, but we sell a lot in Asia. Okay, so that's channel development. So this is our CPG, our grocery, food, drug, mass channel. So this is bagged coffee down the grocery aisle, K-Cups, Via, things like that. Been growing very, very quickly. Again, double-digit top-line growth, great margin expansion, and a really complementary business to our core retail business. So that's the business. And it's a big business, and there's a lot going on to keep it growing at the rate it's been growing. So just shifting gears back to our role and responsibility. For us, again, performance driven through the lens of humanity. There should be something there. Oh, there it is. They decided to do a build on me. There we go. Okay. And for us, there's three major places that we're focused. Building future with farmers. I'll talk about all three of these. Pioneering green retail on a global scale, and creating pathways to opportunity for veterans and young people. So for us, ethical sourcing is absolutely vital to Starbucks. First of all, the quality of bean is higher when it's ethically sourced. The sustainability, it's not just a word. The sustainability of the crop is significantly higher. We have what we call cafe practices, and cafe practices include what happens in origin in the field, but it also has pretty strict requirements around financial transactions, so traceability of payments from the wholesalers to the farmers. We want to make sure that everything that we buy, as we buy it, and we use wholesalers and exporters just like everyone else, that money flows all the way back through, and we have audit requirements and traceability requirements for the money, traceability requirements for the origin of the coffee so that we know exactly what we're buying and where it came from, and lots of things in cafe practice around crop rotation and fertilization and irrigation, and just trying to educate farmers on how to grow more coffee. There's a great story. I've spent a fair bit of time in Costa Rica. We have a farm that we purchased down there. And the farmer told this great story. We have agronomists that work full-time for Starbucks. All they do, and we have one little farm that the entire output for that farm is 1 hour worth of coffee in North America. So that farm is more of a lab for us. And one of the agronomists that works on the farm had been working with a woman that owned about 10 acres of coffee. And she had been using cafe practices for 10 years, and her neighbor, we couldn't get them to convert to cafe practices, so we weren't buying coffee from them. And the output from when she started 10 years ago, the farms are about the same size, hers was slightly below his. He used long established practices. She was open to cafe practices. Her output was triple his by the end of that 10 years. And she kept trying to tell him, this isn't that hard, it's not expensive. Oh, and by the way, if you can't afford it, Starbucks will give you a small microloan at the beginning of your crop startup that you'll pay with the harvest, and this whole thing, you're going to grow the size of your farm. And he's starting to adopt cafe practices. So that's what we're all about. And some of that coffee will go to Nestle, some of that coffee will go to Stumptown, some of it will go to Blue Bottle, and some of it will go to Starbucks. And we're fine with all of that because we know we need a big, sustainable source of coffee. We want to do it the right way. It shows up in the quality of the cup. It makes farmers' lives better, and that's a sustainability equation that we absolutely have to get right. So we have 99% of our coffee is ethically sourced through cafe practices. My opinion, it's an opinion, is that cafe practices are probably a little bit more stringent than fair trade. They have many of the same preferences, but I actually think we go a little bit further in some areas. So some of our coffee is fair trade certified, but all of it is ethically sourced, 99% of it. That last 1%, we're working on. It's hard to get at, particularly some of the micro lot coffees that we really do want to buy and are important to our scale of variety, but we're working on it. So next year is our goal to get to 100%. And we're doing a lot more with farmer loans. And again, it's encouraging to see how far this money can go. A lot of these loans are just, a farmer needs to generally rotate out 5% of their crop every year. Take out old trees that are 20 years old and plant seedlings. That has an impact, obviously, on yield. Over the long term, it goes up, but in the near term, it's a little bit of a hit. They need to fertilize early on. And they need to watch for certain types of pests that can come in early on. And so what we'll do is we'll lend them just a little bit of money early on in the process to do that, and they pay us back with a harvest. So by opening that up, we've changed a lot of outlooks on how people do things. So, another video.
Our biggest threat as humans is thinking that we and the planet are invincible. Our biggest threat as humans is thinking that we and the planet are invincible. That kind of denial has put our world at risk. But we humans also have the power to learn and to make a difference. Conservation International believes that people need nature, that it's our responsibility to protect it. For 15 years, Conservation International has been on an amazing journey with Starbucks to ethically source their coffee around the world. Together, they've created a new way to buy that coffee, one that is sustainable, transparent, and good for people and the planet. This journey has covered 4 continents where they've improved the lives of 1 million farmers and workers and cared for millions more coffee trees. Conservation International is proud to recognize Starbucks for ethically sourcing 99% of their coffee, making them the largest coffee retailer to reach this milestone. But there's always more to do. Starbucks is committed to 100% ethically sourced coffee. It is that constant pursuit of this last 1% that helps make the world a better place. That's why Starbucks is working with groups like Eastern Congo Initiative, which is helping thousands of coffee farmers in the Democratic Republic of Congo to increase their production, creating opportunities for local communities. In the end, this isn't about coffee. It's about possibilities and commitment. Whether you're a global company like Starbucks or a single human being, you can make a difference. And all those differences add up to a world that's changed for the better.
So Conservation International is an independent third party that we've been working with for a number of years on cafe practices. Okay, getting in the home stretch here. Pioneering green retail. We're encouraging people to bring in their own tumblers. We're up to about 5%. We'd like it to be a bigger number, but there's a lot of habit there that we're trying to work on in that. We're reducing energy and water consumption by 25% in company-operated stores. We're well along our route to that. And then we have a significant number of LEED certified stores in 19 countries across the globe. And there's some really cool ones that I visited when I was in China. Very innovative design and LEED certified. So those two things can go hand in hand. And then pathways to opportunity. So we've committed to hire 10,000 veterans. We're well into that process. Howard spent quite a bit of time on military bases. We have a number of Starbucks stores that are close to military bases that really hire only military spouses and veterans. There's on the apron, if you're a military spouse or a veteran, there's a label that you can get that says what arm of the service that you were in. And that's been very positive to partners, and it's just been a great thing for all of us. You know, our veterans are some of our best workers in our stores. They're a fantastic source of talent for us. They bring great experience, calm when things get crazy, and we've just had an unbelievable service to that. And I think we've been helping out as people have returned from Iraq and other places, Afghanistan. It's nice to be able to help them land in a place where they can be successful. 25,000, our goal to have graduated through the Starbucks College Achievement Plan by 2025. For those of you that aren't familiar, this is a partnership that we have with Arizona State University. It's an online degree, but it has all of the benefits of a real ASU degree. When you graduate, you walk across the stage if you so choose. And we started just funding we started funding this junior and senior year of our partners in our stores. We now, as of last month, we're funding the full 4 years, working with Arizona State and the federal government, all of that together, a free education for people that work at Starbucks. And there's no attachment. So you can come. There are people that I know today that are interviewing at Starbucks because of this benefit. They plan to come, get their degree, and they'll probably leave soon after they graduate, and that's just fine for us. It gives them significant access to education that they wouldn't have before. One of the key things, and there's a great article in the Atlantic, it's on the cover if you haven't seen it, but one of the key things that you find for a lot of students, particularly if their parents didn't go to college, they don't really know how to get into the application process. They may have taken some courses, they may have some college, they have a desire to go, but maybe they can only go part-time. It's a pretty scary thing to figure out how to get all of that together. It's hard to get your transcripts. The whole education process hasn't made it that easy for people to do that, and you know their parents haven't gone through it, so there's no counselor like I had and probably many people in this room had. And so what we have, and again this is Arizona State, Dr. Crow at Arizona State is an amazing mind in the higher education space. There's counselors that help. And so from the moment you start, as you're thinking about applying, you have a person that you know, that knows you, knows your background, knows what you have, talks to you various times through the process, sends you emails. Hey, look, I noticed that you dropped Psych 101. Why did you drop it? Hey, look, you know, you're coming up. You got to take your get your courses registered within the next couple of weeks, otherwise you're going to miss it. Just simple things like that in people's lives that probably don't have a significant amount of financial assistance, probably work full-time in a crazy job, crazy fun but crazy busy job at Starbucks, and this gives them a lifeline and a person to understand and a person that's on their side, and it's getting some traction. So we're really happy about that. We think it could be a game changer, and we hope others come along, other universities and other employers. And then 10,000 opportunity youth. So we've made a commitment to hire, again, in the space of folks that generally aren't employed today, that might not be in school today, and really trying to figure out how to create a network of recruitment and access to those people to come in to Starbucks, because we know that's a great place to start. It's a place where you're a part of a team. It's a place where you can learn. It's a place where you can make your share of mistakes, as we all did as we started our careers, and there's a supportive environment. So we are working on a network to try to make sure we get those folks into our stores as well. Like a lot of companies, we have Global Month of Service. There'll be hundreds of volunteer projects, thousands of volunteers, probably tens of thousands of hours that we do in our April Global Months of Service. Focus this year was on Opportunity Youth and Opportunity Youth organizations. How can we help those folks? When we had we had a managers meeting in Houston a couple of years ago. We went out, there was a 3-day conference, a big investment for the company. And one of the 3 days, we actually didn't do seminars and we didn't do breakout groups and we didn't do all the things that you typically do at these corporate retreats. What we did is we went out and we painted houses and redid lots and packed backpacks for kids and made lunches for one of the 3 days, which again I think is a commitment and shows where our head is. So I've tried here today, it's a difficult topic, and I've tried to make it a little less esoteric, hopefully with real examples. We're performance driven through the lens of humanity, and the last thing I want you guys to see is just a video, and I want you to hear it from Howard, because he's the chief architect. This was at our, we do a semi-annual investor meeting where every other year we go to New York and every other year we have it in Seattle. So these investors, there was about 200, had just come to Seattle and spent an entire day at the roastery and going through a number of financial presentations. And this was Howard's closing comment.
What it takes to build a great, enduring company. But I want to add something to that. This is hard work. What we're trying to do is it's a high wire act. There's lots of challenges that go with it. Managing an organization of 21,000 plus stores, the global nature of the business, the challenges, the aspirations, the HR issues, the commodity costs, your expectations, the customer's expectations. It's very, very difficult. And I think the way we do it and why we've been successful is because this is deeply, deeply personal. It's personal on so many different levels, and I would attach a word to it that is not used in some of the things you more often than not write about, and it's love. We love this company. We love it in an emotional way. There are many times when we're in meetings and we cry. We cry from the emotion of what we have to do, the decisions we have to make, and the things that move us. And when you love something as much as we love this company and the responsibility that goes with 300,000 people and their families, you almost do anything to sacrifice what it takes, not to win, but to do things the right way. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. From time to time, we are going to disappoint. But I go back to what I said earlier this morning. We are playing the long game. We're playing the long game to build a great, enduring company that is the kind of company that our people can go home at night and share with their family, their friends, that they're proud of, that they believe in, and that they trust. And it goes back to the currency I spoke about earlier this morning. The most important characteristic of building a great, enduring company is to build trust with your people, trust with your customers, and trust with your shareholders. That's what we're about. And I hope today that you saw in us and the people that you met and the conversations you had a level of transparency, a level of authenticity, and the fact that we really, really believe not only in what we're doing, but we believe in the future of our company.
So pretty powerful stuff. Not often you hear a CEO say that in any forum, but he's sitting in front of 200 investors and analysts. And for those of you that have a chance to interact with those folks, they're fine people, but they are black and white, and they really just want him to stop talking so they can ask me about some model or commodity cost. So he knows that, but what he's trying to tell them is, if something happens in a quarter and we overinvest, and we spend a little bit more on people, or we make this decision or that decision, you need to understand as investors that that's what you're owning, and it's integral to who we are. So thanks for your time. I'll take any questions that you have.
I'm going to first question, if
Okay.
I might.
Yeah.
In addition to crying, in the boardroom, in the meetings, within Starbucks, what are the discussions like? How are the conversations framed as you as a company try to balance your strong, deep love for the company and also the financial necessities of running an organization of this size?
Yeah, and obviously Howard was making an extreme point there. It's not, that type of emotion isn't on display.
So there's no
much.
crying in Starbucks?
There's no crying in finance at Starbucks. But what I would say is, what's always present in our meetings is, are we doing the right thing for our partners? Are we doing things that make our partners proud? Are we doing things that promote the brand and are consistent with what we're all about? And we've been in our history, even when I've been there, where we've been having to go in and do some cost cutting. And even as we do that, that's an antagonizing set of meetings for us to decide what we're not going to do. And I'll be honest with you, most of the cost cutting we did in the most recent round was just not hiring, not letting people go, but just not hiring. And even that's really hard, because at our core, we're a growth company and we're a people company. And so I think that most of the meetings at Starbucks, they're not that different than the meetings that I had at GE. They're business focused, they're balanced. We're trying to drive change. We're trying to do what's right. But what's different is really the how, and how we think about it, and how we want to discuss it and position it and communicate it with our people.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes.
You mentioned the importance of fostering trust in your company and with your partners. What would you say the most important thing that you do is in terms of establishing trust in all of your operations?
Yeah, I think it's, for us, it's trying to always, as we do things in the store, trying to always ask ourselves, what's the impact on the team that's in the store? So whether it's rolling out a new product, or making changes to the benefit program, or updating the mobile app, the things that get funding the fastest and the things that move the fastest and frankly get us the most excited are the things that impact the partners favorably. So I was talking about the mobile app earlier, just as an example. The beauty of the mobile app isn't only that it's going to add incremental sales, and it will, because people that used to not want to come into Starbucks at 8:30 because they knew the line was long, they may now order in advance and walk in and pick it up. But the beauty is it makes things better for our partners. The way that we built the app is it's completely integrated into the system. So it comes into the same POS terminal, it goes down the same production line, it goes right out to the same handoff plane. So if you're a barista at peak, at the busiest time in the morning, what that means is instead of customers having to wait in line, come through the POS, you see customers that you know well just come in and pick up their drink, they're happier. You don't have any funny thing that you have to do. You don't have to go to some POS in the cloud or go to a different spot in the store. It's just integrated with everything. So net, for you, it's faster, your customer's happier, and the line's shorter. Well, just back up the truck on those ideas. We're all about those. And to me, and I've told investors this, and they think I'm crazy, it's an ancillary benefit that it's going to drive more sales. My customers are happy and my partner's happy and lines are shorter. If I broke even on the investment, that's a win as a CFO. So anyway, I think that's the kind of things that we try to understand. We have a new COO who's a former Microsoft executive, was the CEO of Juniper Networks, Kevin Johnson is his name. And as he's come in, he's realized that our customer-facing technology, I would argue, is as good as you can get. The app and what we do and mobile payment and all that stuff. But a lot of the partner stuff that we do in stores, it's not that friendly. So for example, you won't believe it, but we still do inventory in our stores with clipboards, pens, and pencils. Do people got to count the number of bags of coffee? Meanwhile, customers are coming up and buy, I got to redo my count. He's like, they have these things that you can put on your phone and scan the inventory. You can do it in about 1/15 of the time. And so it's that type of thing. And again, those things, they don't cost a lot. From a CFO standpoint, you can capitalize that and amortize it, right? You want to get the right return, but those aren't hard decisions. And so that's ever present in our discussions and in the room as well. Yes.
Scott, I think the challenge that Howard mentioned and you mentioned is trying to find the sweet spot between the investments in the people and the planet and still be profitable, because your profits are impressive. But you also said you have some belief, or at least even some data, that those investments do have a long-term payoff. Do investors want you to show that or demonstrate that in a tangible way, or do they take that on faith? That alternatively, wouldn't they just say, quit investing in these environmental and people things, we would even be more profitable? How does that argument work?
I think the best investors, and there's a broad range of investors and analysts, the best investors completely get it. They're customers of ours. They've been in our stores. They've been in competitor stores. They feel and see the difference. And they know that we provide, when we get it right, a premium product, a premium experience, and a really great place to come and work and have a cup of coffee or dip in and dip out of. And so they understand that. They don't necessarily ask us to trace it through. They don't react negatively when I say, hey, look, we're not going to be at the top end of our 15 to 20% EPS guidance range this year because I just spent $140 million of incremental investments, which are the right things to do. They're not going to say, well, what the heck? Where's my money? They understand that, given the size of our company, we have to perpetuate that. There are some investors that are on their spreadsheets, and what they really want to know is, okay, tell me about the $140 million. What's the run rate into next year? Are you going to do it again next year? Is this what, and those people, it's a harder discussion because, you kind of want to grab them and say, well, that's not really what this is about. I'll get to that when we get into next year's guidance, but this is the right thing to do. And so, to some extent, you just have to have the fortitude. And then, again, you go back to performance driven through the lens of humanity. If we stop delivering the performance, it would be a different story, and it would be a harder story. And I think we could do it for a quarter or two or a year or two and, bounce around a bit if we needed to invest more, and I think we'd be given the benefit of the doubt largely. But the proof is in the performance. We keep talking about it, we keep doing it, and the numbers keep going up because we believe. Yes?
So, first I'd like to say that I love Starbucks, and you guys have a place in my daily schedule.
That's great, thank you.
But so a company that grows as fast as you are growing, and like you said, you have to sell 400 million brand new cups of coffee next year to meet your guidelines and projections. How a company that normally grows that fast is known for like hard-nosed selling. But you guys have such a great culture. So how do you really cultivate that in your stores? Because you'll obviously tell your employees that, hey, we want to generate more sales for next year, but you don't want to be that company that turns away customers because you're so focused about sales. So
Right.
how do you really balance that?
It's, first and foremost, we try to hire the right types of people that in their nature is to work hard and take care of customers and respond well when things go a little bit wrong, like they do in all jobs, right? So having those right kind of people, and then the manager plays a key role in mentoring those and dealing with issues on the spot. And then what we try to do at corporate headquarters is have products that are relevant. We've been trying to expand the day parts a little bit, and that's fancy word for saying get more traffic at lunch. We've started an evenings program where there'll be a unique food menu and a limited beer and wine menu. So trying to get it out of, have transactions that grow the business outside of that peak. And then at peak, we've been doing things at corporate through things like lean principles and also really dialing up our staffing at peak and really making sure, do we have it exactly right? And you would think, and we're really good about it, we've got a great operations team, and you would think after 40 years we have that about right. But the reality is a little bit of improvement in that peak time staffing, it's amazing what it does. And so all of that is what contributes to a successful store. Generally, an experienced manager that's got a team that they've been hired to the brand, to support the brand, and then us at corporate trying to bring the right products and processes to help them, how we design the store, technology in the store. So that's the balancing act. And it's hard to grow a system of this size at that rate, but you got to get all that stuff right. Yes?
I think a couple of months ago, Starbucks announced they were going to take some locations and have an experiment where you could use those locations to talk about social issues and diversity. Is that still an experiment, or what's the status on that?
So what we did for a week, and it was planned to be for a week, is we had our stores in the U.S. race together on cups. It was in with a partnership with USA Today, and it was to raise awareness on race. It was not required that baristas do that. It was totally optional. And the thought was for that period of time to raise awareness. And we're still involved in that process, and we're still committed to that process. But the writing on the cups part of it has ceased after a week as planned. We announced we'll open a store in Ferguson, which is great. And so we're still very much committed to that endeavor. Just not that writing on cups piece of it, which was planned for a short period. Yes?
How much, or how is the water issue or lack thereof in California affecting your business?
Right. It's a great question. So the short answer is we have been working over time to reduce not only energy usage but water efficiency in our stores. And that's been in new store design. We've come up with some things, as well as in renovations. And so luckily for us in California, we had made great strides. And so we believe we're in really good shape as far as meeting the regulations. So we don't think it's going to have any impact. But thankfully, we had an early start.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Is Starbucks taking these measures and social responsibility more for itself, or to be an example to corporate America, or even make a statement in the political?
For us, it's about our people and our customers. So it's not about the brand, it's not about marketing, it's about doing things that we believe is right for our people and our customers. And again, we know when we get those things right, good things happen. So again, whether it's marriage equality, whether it's race relations, we know that those are topics that are deeply important to our customers and our communities, and so we're taking a stand on those. And honestly, you open yourself up to criticism. So people that say we're just doing it for marketing, to some extent, some of these things it might be easier not to do. So I actually think it has nothing to do with marketing and PR. It's all about our partners, our people, our communities, and doing what's right. And the easier thing would be to do nothing. And so we choose not to. And again, like I said in my earlier remarks, whether you agree with those positions we're taking or not, I guess what I would argue is I'm hoping that you would agree that it's the right thing for companies to do, and particularly companies like Starbucks that are so integral to communities and people. So. Yes.
I'm just curious, Scott, I heard as you were talking about expanding product into off-peak times, and you talked a little bit about getting the yes, but also having to get those getting to know as well.
Right.
I'm just curious about if you could talk a little bit about your process about how you get to yes and how you get to no.
Right.
And I'm also just curious about how you would compare that to your time at GE.
Yes.
Another innovative company that obviously knew how to get to yes and no.
Right.
And you kind of compare
Yeah,
the two.
it's a fantastic case study. The short answer is at GE, we had what I would call a traditional kind of toll gate process. Some of it was based upon Six Sigma, some of it was based on product introduction and enhancement, and that rigorous process using toll gates, a lot of large companies use. So you have an assessment, and then you have an approval, and then you have a design, and then you have an approval. That would never work at Starbucks. If we tried to do that, first of all, we have too much going on. Second of all, it's not really consistent with how Howard thinks about it. So what we've primarily done is we've said, look, what we want to do is we want to tie our projects to our key strategies. So we've got a strategic framework for growth. And products that aren't tied to those key strategies, we'd like to see those projects, talk about them, and try to understand them. And that process is going to be a very thin process that sits on top of the business units and basically is run by me and our COO. And so those projects that don't quite make the cut for the strategy and take a lot of resources, we just have a discussion about them, and that's pretty much it. What we found in all of that, it isn't actual, what I thought is, well, those discussions are going to weed out a lot of projects and we're going to get so much more efficient. What we found is just the process of creating that review has caused a whole bunch of projects that used to be kind of zombie projects and people used to just kind of work on the side. Those are now, they're not coming through the process. And so if you were one of the businesses and you were getting ready for your review, what you've done is you've said, look, I want to see all the projects that might hit this. And you may not have done that very often. Now you're doing it quarterly. You go down and you say, why are we doing this? What's this? I told so-and-so not to work on this. And so what's happening is well down in the organization, good decisions are being made about resources before we even start investing. And so that's been the beauty of it. It's not been so much sitting around a table and weeding out projects. And Starbucks is a wonderful company, and we like to do lots and lots of things, but we were doing all of these things that never really had a chance to add value, and now that's much thinner. Yeah. Yes?
I was wondering, has there been discussion or plans regarding maybe reducing the amount of plastic used in stores?
Can you say that again?
The amount of plastic that's used in stores, has there been plans or discussion about maybe reducing that a little bit?
Right.
To maybe like biodegradable options?
Yes, so we talk a lot about that. It's a tricky proposition, biodegradable cups and hot coffee. There's not an easy technology.
I was thinking more for like the frappuccinos or like the teas.
Great. So the Frappuccino cups are recyclable.
Okay.
The trick is, though, you're bringing up, so we talk about this a lot. The solution is difficult because what happens is municipality by municipality and certainly nation by nation, there's all sorts of different recycling capabilities and then rules. And so you literally could go from a Tukwila store to a Seattle store, and there's differences in what can be recycled and how it's recycled. And so wherever we can, and you see them in the stores, we try to put those recyclable containers to capture what we can. And where we can have the right kind of plastics in our Frappuccinos, if you look at the bottom, you'll see that it's recyclable. We try to, but there's much more work to be done, and we're doing what we can. Yeah. And there's been an issue about K-Cups. That aren't biodegradable. And so we've been trying to think of ways through that. Green Mountain, who's the company that makes those K-Cups. K-Cups are the little pods that you put in a home coffee machine. We'd love to find a way to get the technology to make those biodegradable. It would be such a home run, but it's hard because of the pressure and the heat of the coffee. Yes?
Yeah, I've got a question. After being in agriculture all my life, how far out do you guys go as far as buying the beans? And is there a concern with the amount of sales and your growth rate that you're going to be able to get the beans that you want and also get the quality you want?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a limit on how far out we can contract beans. There's two ways that we protect prices. One is through the futures market. And what happens is when you get past 12 or 15 months, there is a futures market there, but it's shallow, which means it's expensive. Like I could hedge 24 months out, but that hedge is going to be really expensive. It's going to have a lot of financing cost to it. And so 15, 16 months on the futures market. Then the other thing I can do with you as a farmer is we can contract price. Generally, you're not anxious to go much out beyond this crop and maybe the next one for obvious reasons. You don't know where prices are going to be. You don't know what production's going to look like. You don't know what a drought could come. And so I've always said there's a theoretical maximum at about 18 months. That's about as far out as we can go. Now, could we go to 19 months? Maybe, but it's in that range. And we're about 17 months today, so we're quite long. And the second part of your question, sorry.
Well, we were dealing with like hummus. The people growing the chickpeas
Right.
in the Blues area here.
Yes.
And some of the big companies from back east wanted to go out 3 years on a contract. But it's awful hard for somebody like myself, work for a seed company, to get a grower to agree to go out 3 years.
Yes.
Most of our growers don't want to go out more than 1 year.
Right.
Because of the drought, moisture, prices, and plus, if you got a contract out for 3 years at a low price and the market goes up, well, maybe you might not get the garbanzos plant.
That's right, and we run into the exact same reality. You had asked about the supply of coffee. So Arabica, which is the higher quality coffee, there's Robusta and Arabica. We only buy Arabica. We buy 4% of the world's Arabica. So there's a lot of coffee out there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There are times when we have to pay up a little bit because we have certain varietals and regions that we buy from, and there might be some disruptions in that have a little impact on price. But countries like Brazil, they produce an enormous amount of coffee, and we buy a fraction of it.
We'll do one more question. If someone has one.
Yes.
So I'm kind of piggybacking on several questions that have been mentioned, but urban legend, at least, there was a shareholder meeting and Howard Schultz was asked about impact of your policy on marriage equality? And he famously replied something along the lines of, the return's been there, it's been strong. That said, if you don't want to keep our stock, you're free to sell it. Confirm, deny?
It was set, it's on public record. Okay. Can we do one more?
Sure.
Yes.
So my question was, how do you make kind of the strategic planning or volunteering, some of the initiatives you talked about, a priority when you've got so many other competing priorities with time, and I guess kind of how it applies to all of us in our jobs? How would you recommend we make that a priority?
You know, it's strategic planning in companies. It's really easy to get it wrong, and maybe that's a negative way to say it. It's really easy. It's really hard to get it right. It's really hard to get it right. And the reason it's hard to get it right is because in many places I've been, you get a consultant or you get someone from finance or whatever, and they have an idea about what strategic planning should be, and it's almost like someone opened up a box on strategic planning and they're going through the SWOT analysis, and when you get through it, what you found is you really haven't pushed the thinking. You really haven't asked yourself tough questions. And there's a pretty presentation with a lot of great charts and graphs that primarily validates what you're doing today and what you're thinking about doing tomorrow, as opposed to really pushing the thinking and asking the hard questions. And so the best strategic planning that I've seen, we did this at Chase, we did it at GE, and we have a new strategic planning leader, relatively new at Starbucks, who brought it to Starbucks. It's really a question-based approach. So it's interesting that Chase went to the extreme. There was no strategic planning process outside answering key questions for the board. So big key questions about where the company was going to go, where certain strategies the companies were going to go, and then SWAT teams went and worked on those questions. And that was the strategic plan. There was no 5-year financial forecast, or this, that, or the other, or validation of market research, right? It was just about those questions. And so good strategic planning challenges the status quo. It should make people uncomfortable. It puts all the issues on the table that are big that no one really wants to talk about. And it does research around those issues. It frames them up and it drives a discussion. It needs to be long-term in nature, obviously. But it's hard to get right, because what you do as a company is, if you're not willing to really buy into that level of strategic planning, you default to, we got to get the board something. And we know if we do the pie charts and the bar charts and the photos and reaffirm our strategy, that we've met that challenge. So I sound really negative. It's super hard to do. So.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.